Have you ever thought about what it means when someone sacrifices years of their life for you? Not just words, not just promises, but actual sweat in the heat, calloused hands, and nights of silence with no one to lean on. That's what my dad did. For 24 months straight, my father, Ernesto, worked in the deserts of Texas. The sun there is merciless. He would wake up before dawn, when the sand was still cold under his boots, and by noon, the air itself seemed to shimmer. I could almost hear the sound of the wind pushing grains of dust across endless ground whenever he called me on the phone. His voice carried fatigue, but never complaint. Every month, like clockwork, he wired $600 to me. The amount never changed. Not $590, not $610, always $600, as if he carved that number into stone. To him, it wasn't just money. It was his way of protecting me, of protecting his grandchildren. And to me, it felt like a lifeline. I trusted that money would cover school supplies, groceries, maybe even a few small joys for the kids. I trusted that my husband, Tony, would be the one to stretch every dollar, to make sure nothing went to waste. Because isn't that what marriage is supposed to be? Partnership, trust, building a future together. I'd close my eyes sometimes and picture Dad out there, sweat rolling down his temples, his shirt clinging to his back, while his rough hands tightened bolts or carried heavy tools. He was 64, not 24. Each shift was a gamble with his own health. And yet, he sent those $600 without fail, as if he was willing to trade away pieces of his strength so that my children wouldn't have to go without. When the notification pinged on my phone, deposit received $600, I would breathe a little easier. I'd glance at Tony and smile. Dad came through again, I'd say, and Tony would nod, quick, distracted. At the time, I thought it was just his way of hiding exhaustion. Now, when I look back, I wonder if that nod was hiding something else entirely. But in those moments, I let myself feel relief. I let myself believe we were safe. My kids deserve that. You ever cling to a belief because the alternative is too heavy? That's what I did. The 600 became a rhythm in our lives, like a heartbeat. I planned around it, breathed around it. My dad never said it out loud, but I knew he was counting on me to honor his sacrifice, and I wanted to, desperately. I wanted to prove to him that his work under the scorching desert wasn't just disappearing into nothingness. That's the thing about trust. You don't check it every day. You don't ask, "Are you sure?" Or, "Did you do what you said?" You just believe. You lean into it like leaning into the wind. And for 24 months, I leaned on Tony to carry that weight with me. I would tell my kids, "Grandpa works hard so you can have what you need." Their eyes would light up, and sometimes they'd draw him little cards with crayon hearts and stick figures holding hands. I saved those drawings, thinking one day I'd send them all to Dad in a package. Proof that his grandchildren felt his love even from hundreds of miles away. Looking back, I realize how naive I was. But in that moment, in those months, that 600 wasn't just money. It was a story, a promise, and a bond between generations. And I believed in it with everything I had. Queens isn't the kind of place where you can hide your struggles. Every block has life spilling out of it. Kids running with basketballs, mothers comparing grocery prices in the corner store, neighbors talking too loud from the fire escape. And then there was us, squeezed into a 2-bedroom apartment, pretending we were fine. On paper, $600 a month should have made things easier. My dad's money was supposed to give us breathing room. Yet, our fridge always seemed half empty, and our bills arrived in stacks that grew heavier each week. I'd look at the envelopes spread across the kitchen table like little warnings, each one reminding me of what we owed. Tony would pat my hand and say, "Relax, Soph. I've got it under control." He said it with such confidence that, for a while, I wanted to believe him. But then I'd walk past our kids' bedroom and hear them whispering, my son asking why his shoes had holes while his friends had new ones, my daughter wondering why we couldn't afford her school trip. Those whispers cut deeper than any bill ever could. I tried to make sense of it. I worked part-time shifts whenever I could, saving every tip from the diner. Still, something didn't add up. With Dad's 600 plus Tony's paycheck, why were we still living like this? Why did I need to borrow sugar from the neighbor just to bake cookies for my daughter's birthday? Queens has a way of showing you what you don't have. I'd watch other moms at the playground hand their kids bottled juice and fresh sandwiches, while I split one granola bar in half for mine. It wasn't jealousy, it was shame. Shame that despite all the help from my father, my children were still going without. And yet, every time I raised the question, Tony had an answer. The bills are higher this month. Or, the kids need more than you realize. Or simply, trust me. That last one always silenced me, because isn't that what marriage is built on? Trust. But trust doesn't pay for groceries, it doesn't cover late fees, and every time I swiped my debit card, praying it wouldn't decline, I felt the cracks widening. One night, after putting the kids to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen. The only light came from the street lamp outside, throwing long shadows across the table. I spread out the bills again, calculating numbers in the margins like a student cramming for an exam. The math didn't lie. Something was missing. I heard Tony come in, his footsteps heavy, his cologne sharp. He kissed the top of my head, glanced at the bills, and said, "Why do you always stress? It's handled." Then he disappeared into the bedroom, leaving me with my questions. You ever have that gnawing feeling in your stomach? That quiet voice that says something isn't right, even when you can't prove it? That voice was starting to scream. But I shoved it down, because what was the alternative? To accuse the man I married of betraying not just me, but my father? To admit that maybe all of Dad's sacrifice wasn't reaching us the way I thought? That was too painful to consider. So I kept pushing forward, making lists, stretching meals, telling myself this was temporary, that Tony knew what he was doing, that one day the kids would look back and see how hard we tried. Life in Queens moved on. Sirens at night, laughter in the hallways, the smell of fried food drifting from the bodega downstairs. From the outside, we looked like any other struggling family. But inside, I was already starting to drown. And I didn't even know yet how deep the water went. It started small, like hairline fractures in glass. The kind you barely notice at first, but can't stop staring at once you do. And soon, you realize the whole thing is ready to shatter. For me, that first crack was a bill from the electric company stamped in red, past due. I held it in my hand, the paper soft from how many times I folded and unfolded it, as if looking at it long enough would make the numbers smaller. I thought about Dad's $600 and Tony's paycheck and tried to convince myself it was just bad timing. Maybe Tony had already paid and it hadn't processed yet. Maybe I was worrying too much. But then came the second crack. My daughter, Sophia Jr., came home in tears because her teacher told her she couldn't join the after-school art club until we paid the outstanding fee. It wasn't much, less than $50, but it might as well have been $500. I hugged her tight, whispering promises I wasn't sure I could keep, all the while thinking, how? How is there no money for this? The third crack cut the deepest. My son Mateo needed new sneakers. The soles of his old ones flapped when he walked, the rubber worn thin. I planned to buy him a pair with Dad's next deposit, but when I checked our account, it was nearly empty again. Less than $50 sat there, mocking me. Where was the rest? That night, while folding laundry, I noticed something odd. In Tony's jeans pocket was a small, crumpled slip of paper. At first, I thought it was a receipt from the grocery store, but when I smoothed it out, my breath caught. It was a betting slip. Numbers, teams, odds, a sports bet. My heart thudded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I wanted to believe it was old, maybe from before we married. But the date was right there in black ink, just last week. I sat on the edge of the bed, slip in hand, staring at Tony's sleeping figure. His chest rose and fell in the dim light, peaceful, untroubled. I wanted to shake him awake and demand answers, but I froze. What if I was wrong? What if it was just a mistake? What if confronting him meant admitting the truth I didn't want to see? That my husband had been lying to me, stealing from our children, squandering my father's sacrifice. I shoved the slip into the back of my drawer, as if hiding it could also hide the possibility. But once you see the crack, you can't unsee it. The next week, I noticed more things. Tony's phone buzzing late at night with notifications he quickly silenced. His sudden trips to clear his head. The way he avoided eye contact when I asked simple questions like, "Did you pay the water bill?" The kids felt it too. The tension. They started asking if Daddy was mad at me. I told them no, everything was fine, but my voice lacked conviction. Then came the moment that snapped everything into focus. I logged into our joint email to print a coupon, and there they were. Confirmation emails from betting sites, each one cold and undeniable. Tony had accounts with multiple online sports books. The amounts weren't huge on their own, 50 here, 100 there, but add them up across 24 months, and I could see exactly where Dad's 600 had gone. The betrayal hit like ice water. I thought of my father's hands, cracked and weathered, tightening bolts under the Texas sun. I thought of him collapsing into bed each night, only to wake up before dawn and do it all over again, all for those $600, and Tony had burned them like matches. I closed the laptop and sat in silence, the hum of the fridge filling the room. Have you ever felt your whole reality tilt? That moment when you realize the person you trusted most has been building your life on lies? That was me. Sitting at that kitchen table, I wanted to scream, to throw the laptop across the room. Instead, I buried my face in my hands and cried quietly so the kids wouldn't hear. The cracks were no longer invisible. They were spreading fast, running through every part of our lives, and I knew it was only a matter of time before the glass shattered completely. And deep down, I already sensed I was standing on the edge of that break. There's something about late nights that makes truths harder to hide. The world is quiet, the kids asleep, and every sound feels sharper. That's when the cracks finally split open for me. I was sitting in the living room, the glow of the streetlight seeping through the blinds. The betting slip I had found earlier was burning a hole in my pocket. I could hear Tony in the bedroom, moving around, the faint clink of a belt buckle. My chest was tight, my mind racing. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Tony," I called, my voice steadier than I felt. He walked out in a t-shirt, eyebrows raised. "What's up?" I held up the slip of paper. "What is this?" He froze for half a second before forcing a laugh. "Oh, that. Just some old thing. Don't worry about it." But I was done with half answers. "Old?" "It's dated last week. Tell me the truth. Have you been gambling?" The room felt colder, heavier. His smile dropped, and his eyes darted away. "Sophia, you're overthinking. I've got everything handled." That phrase, "I've got everything handled," it snapped something inside me. I slammed the slip on the table. "Handled? Our bills are late. The kids don't have what they need. And my father? My father is out there breaking his back in the desert, sending money every month, and you've been throwing it away on bets." Tony's jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he'd deny it. Instead, he muttered, "I just thought I could double it, make things easier." I stared at him, stunned. "Easier? You thought risking everything we had would make life easier?" My voice cracked. "This isn't about you winning a game. This is about our kids, about my dad's sacrifice. Do you understand what you've done?" His silence was louder than any words. I walked to his side of the dresser, pulled open the drawer, and grabbed his phone. My hand shook as I scrolled through the emails, each one proof. Confirmation after confirmation, bets placed, money lost. Months of my father's sweat, gone in the blink of an eye. I shoved the phone back into his chest. Look at it. Look at what you did. You lied to me. You lied to them. Tony rubbed his face, avoiding my eyes. I was going to stop. I almost laughed. Stop? When? After the next paycheck? After Dad's next deposit? After you've drained every last drop from us? For the first time in years, I saw fear flicker across his face. Not fear of losing money, but fear of losing me. Soph, don't do this. Don't turn this into something bigger than it is. Bigger? I shouted, my voice echoing through the apartment. You gambled away 2 years of my father's blood and sweat. You left our kids hungry, ashamed, and you call this small? Silence. The kids stirred in the bedroom, and I lowered my voice, though the fury inside me hadn't dimmed. I can't even look at you right now. I turned away, my eyes burning, my body shaking. The confrontation had ended, but nothing was resolved. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Tony beside me, silent, pretending to sleep. And all I could hear was my father's voice on the phone, tired but proud, telling me, "This is for the kids. Make sure they're okay." The weight of betrayal pressed down like a stone, and I knew from that moment on, nothing in our marriage would ever feel the same again. Trust isn't lost in one moment. It crumbles piece by piece until you wake up and realize there's nothing left to hold. That's exactly how it felt after I confronted Tony. The next morning, I moved like a ghost around the kitchen. The kids ate cereal at the table, chattering about school projects and playground gossip, blissfully unaware of the storm that had broken loose the night before. Tony sat across from me, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened, like the world hadn't just shifted under our feet. I couldn't stand to look at him. Every clink of his spoon against the bowl grated on my nerves. I kept replaying his excuses in my head. I thought I could double it. I was going to stop. Lies dressed up as intentions. After dropping the kids at school, I came home and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of unpaid bills. Red notices, late fees, warnings. Each envelope felt like a slap, a reminder that my father's sacrifice had been turned into ashes. I called Dad that afternoon. His voice came through scratchy, weary but steady. "How are the kids? They getting what they need?" My throat tightened. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to tell him his money had kept us safe. But the words caught like splinters. I swallowed hard and forced a cheerful tone. "They're okay, Dad. They miss you." I hung up quickly before the guilt spilled out. Tears blurred the numbers on the bills. How could I tell him the truth? That his sweat and blood, the hours he worked under the desert sun, had all been gambled away by the man I thought I could trust most. That night, Tony tried to act normal. He leaned against the doorway while I folded laundry. "Soph, I get it, I messed up. But we can move past this, I promise." I looked at him, the man I once believed would protect us. Move past it? You gambled away our security, our father's sacrifice. You left our kids without shoes, without heat, and you want me to move past it? He sighed, rubbing his neck. I thought I was doing it for us. To make things better, I shook my head. No, Tony, you did it for you, to chase a rush, to believe in some miracle win. And you dragged us all down with you. That was the moment the last thread of trust snapped. I couldn't believe his words anymore. Every promise sounded hollow, every excuse heavier than the one before. Over the next weeks, I guarded everything. I opened the mail before he could. I hid what little money I had left in an envelope tucked inside my sewing kit. I changed the passwords on my accounts. Survival instincts kicked in, sharper than ever, the kids noticed. Sophia Jr. asked, Mom, why don't you and Daddy sit together anymore? I forced a smile. We're just busy, sweetheart. But inside I was unraveling. One night, while tucking Mateo in, he whispered, Mom, are we poor? The innocence in his eyes broke me. I kissed his forehead and whispered, We're not poor, baby. We're strong. But lying to my child felt like swallowing glass. Meanwhile, Tony kept gambling. I could see it in his eyes, the way he twitched when his phone buzzed, the way he disappeared for hours. He promised to stop, but promises meant nothing now. Trust was gone. And yet, I stayed. Not for him, for the kids, for stability, for the sliver of hope that maybe I could fix what he had broken. But every day felt like walking on glass, waiting for the next lie, the next disappointment. Trust is the foundation of love. Once it's gone, what's left is just a house with cracked walls, waiting to collapse. And as much as I tried to hold it up, I knew deep down, the collapse was already happening. It didn't happen all at once. The breaking point crept in slowly, like a leak under the sink that you ignore until the whole cabinet is warped and rotting. For weeks after the confrontation, I tried to keep the house together, tried to shield the kids from the chaos I carried inside, but pretending can only last so long. It was a Saturday afternoon when it all cracked open. The kids were at the dining table, coloring in their books, crayons scattered across the surface. I was in the kitchen, counting out what little cash I had left, just enough for groceries and gas. My phone buzzed with a notification, overdraft alert. My heart sank. I marched into the bedroom where Tony sat glued to his laptop. Did you touch the account? He didn't even look up. Relax, Soph. I just moved some money around. I'll put it back. Put it back? My voice trembled with fury. Tony, there's nothing left to put back. You've drained everything. He slammed the laptop shut and stood. Don't start this again. You don't understand. I'm close to winning. One more bet and we're set. I laughed bitterly. One more bet? That's what you said last time. And the time before that? How many times do you need to burn us before you realize there's nothing left to win? The kids peeked around the corner, wide-eyed. My chest tightened. Go to your rooms, I whispered, forcing calm into my tone. They scurried away, doors clicking shut. I turned back to Tony, my hands shaking. Do you know what it feels like to lie to my father every time he calls? To tell him his money is keeping us afloat when the truth is you're setting it on fire? His face flushed. Don't drag your dad into this. This is between us. No, Tony, this is about all of us. About the kids who deserve shoes that fit. About the bills piling up. About the man in the desert who breaks his body so we can have a life here. And you've disrespected every single one of them. For a moment, he looked small, almost guilty. But then his pride kicked in. I can fix this, you'll see. That was it, the breaking point. I stepped closer, my voice steady now, ice over fire. No, Tony, you won't fix this. You've had 24 months to fix this, and all you've done is destroy. I can't let you drag us down any further. He blinked, stunned. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm done. I'm taking control of what's left, and I'm protecting our kids from you. The silence after my words felt heavy, final. He opened his mouth, then closed it. For once, he had nothing to say. That night, I packed an overnight bag for the kids and me. Just the essentials, clothes, school supplies, a few favorite toys. As I zipped the bag, tears blurred my vision, but my resolve never wavered. I couldn't let them grow up thinking this chaos was normal. When Dad called the next day, I finally broke. My voice cracked as I told him the truth. The line was quiet for a long time. Then I heard him sigh. Not disappointment in me, but in the man who had wasted everything. Mija, he said softly, you do what you need to do. Protect those babies. That's what matters. The breaking point wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of something else. The moment I chose not just survival, but strength. And once I made that choice, there was no going back. Strength isn't something that arrives in a sudden flash. It builds quietly, like muscle you don't notice until one day you lift something you never thought you could. After reaching my breaking point, I felt both fragile and fierce. Fragile because everything I'd believed in, my marriage, my partner, was crumbling. Fierce because, for the first time, I was ready to fight for myself and my children without hesitation. The first step was small but terrifying. I went to the bank and opened a new account in my name only. Sitting across from the clerk, I felt like I was committing a crime, even though it was my right. My hands trembled as I signed the paperwork. This account wasn't just numbers on a screen. It was my declaration of independence, my shield against Tony's destruction. Next, I found a part-time job at a local diner. It wasn't glamorous. Long hours, sore feet, the smell of grease clinging to my clothes, but it was mine. Every tip slipped into my apron felt like a victory. Each dollar I earned meant food on the table that Tony couldn't gamble away. Of course, Tony noticed. He came home one night, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "So now you're working?" "What? You don't trust me anymore?" I looked him in the eye and said, "No, Tony, I don't. And I won't until you prove you deserve it." For once, he didn't have a comeback. He just muttered under his breath and turned away. That silence felt like a win. The kids sensed the shift too. They watched me with curious eyes, seeing me juggle shifts, bills, and their school projects. One night, Mateo tugged on my sleeve and whispered, "Mom, you're like a superhero." My heart swelled. I wasn't perfect, but in his eyes I was strong, and that was enough. But standing up wasn't only about money. It was about boundaries. I sat Tony down one evening at the kitchen table. The kids were in their rooms, the TV humming softly in the background. I laid out my terms with a clarity that surprised even me. You will not touch my father's money again. You will not use our joint account. If you want to gamble, do it with your own earnings. Not a cent more from this family. And if you break this, Tony, we are done." He scoffed. "What? You think you can just cut me out?" I leaned forward, my voice firm. "I already have." That moment, I wasn't the wife pleading for change. I was the mother protecting her children, the daughter honoring her father's sacrifice. And it felt powerful. Still, the road wasn't smooth. Tony tried to manipulate me with guilt. "You're tearing this family apart," he said one night. I shook my head. "No, Tony. You did that when you chose gambling over us. For the first time, I stopped carrying the blame that wasn't mine." Standing up also meant facing the truth with my dad. On his next call, I didn't sugarcoat. I told him everything, the lies, the gambling, the wasted money. My voice trembled, but I didn't hold back. There was a long pause. Then Dad spoke softly. "Mija, I worked hard because I wanted you to have peace, not this pain. But I'm proud of you. You're stronger than you think." Tears streamed down my face as I realized, even though Tony had betrayed us, I hadn't lost everything. I still had my father's love, my children's trust, and my own strength. Every day after that, I stood a little taller. The betrayal still hurt. The cracks were still there, but I was no longer waiting for someone else to fix them. I was building new walls, sturdier this time, with honesty and resilience. Standing up didn't mean I wasn't scared. I was terrified most days, but fear didn't paralyze me anymore. It fueled me. And in that shift, I discovered a new version of myself. A woman who refused to be broken, who chose to rise. Betrayal doesn't vanish once you stand up. It lingers, echoing in small moments you don't expect. Even as I built new routines, working shifts at the diner, managing the kids' schedules, squirreling away money in my private account, the echoes of what Tony had done haunted me. It was there in the grocery store, when I put back a carton of strawberries because they were too expensive, And I thought of Dad's money. Money that should have bought us all the strawberries we wanted. It was there when I saw Mateo tugging at his too small jacket, and I thought about sneakers he should have had months ago. It was there every time I answered a call from Dad, his voice worn but hopeful, asking, "The kids have everything they need, right?" I lied less now, but the guilt of the past weighed heavy. Tony, for his part, acted like nothing had changed. He still disappeared for hours, still came home with excuses that smelled like smoke and regret. He tried to joke, to charm, to smooth things over, but the damage was too deep. I couldn't unsee the man who had gambled away 2 years of my father's sacrifice. One night, the kids were asleep, and I was at the table balancing bills. Tony came in, leaned against the counter, and said, "You're really holding a grudge, huh?" I looked up slowly. "A grudge?" "Tony, this isn't about me being bitter. This is about trust, and you broke it." He rolled his eyes. "People make mistakes. You act like I killed someone." I stood, my voice firm. "You killed something, Tony. You killed our stability, our safety. You killed the trust our kids should have in their father. That's not a mistake. It's a choice." His face darkened, but I didn't back down. The echoes were still loud, but now I had the strength to meet them head on. The hardest part, though, wasn't fighting with Tony. It was the moments alone, when the house was quiet, and I felt the loneliness seep in. Nights when the kids were asleep, and I sat with a cup of tea, staring at the worn photos of Dad on the wall. His smile, his strength. It reminded me why I couldn't give up. And yet, the echoes whispered, "You trusted the wrong man. You let this happen." I fought back those whispers with small victories, buying Sophia Jr. a sketchbook with my diner tips, watching Mateo race across the playground in new sneakers. Hearing their laughter, free and unburdened, reminded me that betrayal didn't define us. It just tested us. But the echoes never disappeared completely. They lived in the corners of our home, in the silence between me and Tony, in the weight of every dollar stretched too thin. Still, I refused to let them drown me. I told myself, again and again, betrayal is loud, but resilience is louder. And little by little, I learned to live not in the shadow of Tony's choices, but in the light of my own. The day Dad came back still feels like a movie playing in my head. After 2 years of hearing only his voice through crackling phone calls, seeing him step out of that bus, sunburned and leaner than I remembered, hit me harder than I expected. His eyes scanned the crowd until they found mine, and in that instant, the weight of those 24 months pressed down on me all at once. The kids bolted toward him, their backpacks bouncing, arms outstretched. "Grandpa!" Mateo shouted, his little legs pumping as fast as they could go. Dad bent down, scooping him up, his laugh rough but warm. Sophia Jr. hugged his waist, tears streaming down her face even though she tried to hide them. I stood a few feet back, frozen. My chest ached with both joy and shame. Joy because my father was finally home. Shame because I knew what had happened to the money he worked so hard for. When his eyes met mine, I forced a smile. He opened his arms, and suddenly I was a little girl again, burying my face in his shirt, breathing in the scent of sweat, dust, and something unmistakably him. "Mija," he whispered, his voice low so only I could hear. "You did good." But I hadn't. Not really. And that truth gnawed at me. At dinner that night, the house buzzed with excitement. Dad told the kids stories about life in the desert. Sandstorms, rattlesnakes, nights under the stars. They hung on every word, their eyes wide, their plates untouched. Tony sat stiffly at the other end of the table, trying to look engaged, nodding occasionally, but I saw the tension in his jaw. Dad noticed too. His gaze flicked between Tony and me, reading the silence like only a father could. After the kids went to bed, Dad pulled me aside. We sat on the back porch, the air cool against our skin. He lit a cigarette, the flame briefly illuminating his lined face. "All right," he said, exhaling smoke. "What's going on?" I looked down at my hands. "What do you mean?" He gave me that look, the one that stripped away every lie I ever tried to tell. "Don't play with me, Soph." I know when something's wrong. Start talking. My throat tightened. For months, I had carried this secret, shielding him from the truth. But now, with him sitting beside me, the weight felt unbearable. The words spilled out in jagged pieces. Tony's gambling, the vanished money, the unpaid bills, the nights I cried alone while the kids slept. Dad didn't interrupt. He just sat there, smoking, his eyes on the dark yard. When I finally finished, my voice hoarse, he flicked the cigarette butt into the grass and leaned back. "I knew something was off," he said quietly. "Every time you said everything was fine, I could hear it in your voice. But I didn't push. I figured you'd tell me when you were ready." I covered my face with my hands. "I'm so sorry, Dad. You worked so hard, and it was all wasted. I should have—" He stopped me with a raised hand. "No. Don't carry his shame on your shoulders. You did what you could. You kept those kids safe. That's what matters." Tears stung my eyes. "But the money? Mija," he said firmly, his voice cutting through the night. "Money can be earned again. Time with my grandkids, seeing them grow, that's what I worked for. Don't let his choices steal that from me." I nodded, though the ache in my chest didn't fade. The next morning, Dad confronted Tony. I hadn't planned it, but Dad wasn't a man to tiptoe around truth. "So," he said at breakfast, his tone calm but razor-sharp, "you been gambling with my money." Tony froze, the toast halfway to his mouth. I don't know what Sophia told you, but—" Dad slammed his hand on the table, making the plates rattle. "Don't lie to me, boy." "You think I spent 2 years breaking my back in the desert for you to treat it like a game? You think I don't know what desperation looks like?" Tony's face turned pale. "I was trying to help, to multiply it." Dad leaned in, his voice low and dangerous. "You don't multiply sweat and blood. You honor it, and you failed." The room was silent, the kids watching wide-eyed. I wanted to shield them, but maybe they needed to see this, to see their grandfather stand up for what mattered. Tony tried to defend himself, but every excuse fell flat. Dad's stare didn't waver. Finally, Tony pushed back from the table, muttering something about needing air, and left the house. The kids looked at me, confused and scared. I forced a smile. "It's okay, Grandpa's here now." That day marked a shift. Dad wasn't just back physically. He was back as a presence, a force reminding me that I wasn't alone. The shame of betrayal still lingered, but with him by my side, it felt less suffocating. Later, as we sat on the porch again, he put a hand on my shoulder. "You're stronger than you know. And now, you don't have to carry this alone." For the first time in a long while, I believed him. The echoes of betrayal were still there, but now they were joined by something stronger. The steady heartbeat of resilience, passed down from father to daughter. And that heartbeat gave me the courage to keep moving forward. The hardest decisions are never loud. They don't come with fireworks or dramatic music. They come in the quiet moments, when you're staring at your reflection in the bathroom mirror, realizing the person looking back isn't the same as the one who started this journey. That's when I knew I had to choose. Stay chained to betrayal, or step into tomorrow with my children, free from the weight of Tony's choices. Life after Dad's return felt steadier, but it also threw reality into sharper focus. Tony was still around, drifting in and out of the house like a shadow that couldn't find a place to rest. He tried apologies, promises, even small gifts for the kids. But trust doesn't come wrapped in paper. Trust comes from action, from consistency, and he had none left to give. One night, After the kids went to bed, I sat with Dad at the kitchen table. The bills were stacked neatly, for once not overdue, thanks to my diner shifts and his savings. He sipped his coffee, eyes steady on me. "So what's next?" he asked. The question hung in the air. I'd been avoiding it, afraid of what my answer might mean, but deep down, I already knew. "I can't keep doing this," I whispered. The lies, the gambling, the fear every time my phone buzzes. The kids deserve better. I deserve better. Dad nodded, not pushing, just listening. "Then you know what you have to do." The next day, I told Tony. We stood in the living room, sunlight streaming through the blinds, dust dancing in the air. My voice didn't shake. "I want a separation. This house, this family, it can't survive your addiction. I won't let the kids grow up thinking this is normal." His face crumpled, anger and panic warring in his eyes. "Soph, don't do this. We can fix it. I'll change." I shook my head. "You've said that before, too many times. I can't gamble our future on your promises anymore." He begged, argued, even tried to turn it on me. "You're tearing this family apart." But I stood my ground. "No, Tony. You did that when you chose bets over bills, lies over love. I'm just choosing to stop the bleeding." When he left that night, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled, I felt both shattered and free. Shattered because endings always hurt, even when they're necessary. Free because for the first time in years, tomorrow was mine to shape. The kids asked questions, of course. "Where's Daddy going? Is he coming back?" I knelt beside them, brushing their hair back, choosing honesty but not cruelty. Daddy needs help. And until he gets it, we're going to be here, safe with Grandpa. We're going to be okay. Their eyes were sad, but they trusted me. That trust was worth more than anything. Days turned into weeks. The house grew lighter, not just in noise, but in spirit. Dad filled it with laughter, teaching the kids old songs, showing them how to fix little things around the house. I kept working, saving, planning. Each small victory, a paid bill, a full fridge, a smile from the kids, felt like laying another brick in the foundation of our new life. One evening, I found myself on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. Dad joined me, handing me a mug of tea. We sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that feels safe. Finally, he said, "You did it, Mija. You chose tomorrow." I swallowed the lump in my throat. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels heavy. "That's because strength always feels heavy at first," he said. "But one day you'll look back and see you carried it. And you'll know it was worth it." I smiled, tears pricking my eyes. He was right. Choosing tomorrow didn't mean erasing the past. The betrayal would always be a scar. But scars aren't just reminders of pain. They're proof of survival. Proof that I faced what tried to break me and came out stronger. And as I tucked my kids into bed that night, listening to their soft breaths, I realized that tomorrow wasn't some distant dream. It was right here, in this house, in their laughter, in the quiet strength I had finally claimed. Tomorrow was ours.